What's going on, everyone? Today is May 8th of 2022, and in today's video, we're going to talk about yesterday's Kentucky Derby, the 148th version of the race held every year at Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky. And yesterday's race was quite a spectacular one, as the victor was the longest shot in the field of all the 20 horses in the race. Rich Strike, who was listed at 80-1 odds, pulled through and at the very last minute pulled ahead of Epicenter and Zandon to take the victory. Now, I've done decodes on horse racing before. After this video, I'll link them down below in the description. But something is definitely going on in these races. And in this video, we'll decode the numerical riddle that's behind this racehorse, the jockey who ran the horse, as well as the owner, whose name, Richard Dawson, is the same as a late actor. So first, let's focus on the astrological part of this riddle. And we begin with the fact that the jockey in this race is named Sonny Leon. Now, this name stuck out right away because the sign of Leo on the zodiac is the only one whose ruler is the sun. So right off the bat, we see a connection to the sun. Now, in horse racing, the annual award, what's considered the highest award in horse racing, is called the Eclipse Award. And of course, on this channel, I talk frequently about the Eclipse Code, about how things in the news and media, and even our own lives, are playing out in connection to solar eclipses. And notice how the word eclipse in the English language has a gematria value of 222. This achieved using the English extended method on the right side of your screen, which is structured similarly to ancient Hebrew and Greek isopsephy charts. Now, in the Hebrew language, eclipse equals 57, and think about yesterday's date, 5/7 of 2022. To make this even more interesting, in the news yesterday, just shortly before the Kentucky Derby began, we got a story about a WWE superstar named Sonny, who was arrested following a DUI manslaughter that actually occurred last month. So even though it occurred over a month ago, she wasn't arrested until yesterday, just before this race. Yesterday's race was held on a date with numerology of 54 and 18. This is simply by adding the digits of the date together, 5 plus 7 plus 20 plus 22. And 54 and 18 are numbers found in the ordinal value of the word sun. Notice how the word sun equals 54. We also get an 18 in reverse and with the S exception. This has gone down as one of the biggest upsets in Kentucky Derby history. And notice how the word upset also gives us this 54 and 18. This 81 value also stands out because Rich Strike was listed as an 80-1 underdog to win the race. But this story with Sonny in an accident speaks to a larger part of this riddle. Consider how a very famous actor named Sonny Bono died in a skiing accident back in the year 1998 while he was in the California's U.S. House of Representatives. Now, not only does this year's jockey, Sonny Leon, the winner of the race, have the same first name as Sonny Bono, but his last name, Leon, is also made up of 4 letters like Bono, and the name Leon matches Bono in Gematria in all 4 ciphers. Bono and Leon. Sonny Bono died at the age of 62. And notice how that value is shared by both Leon and Bono. Sonny Bono's real first name was Salvatore Philip Bono. It was his full name, I should say. Salvatore Philip Bono. Well, notice how in Gematria, this has the same values as the number 148. Of course, the number 148 was the one stamped on this year's Kentucky Derby, being the 148th edition of the race. Bono's middle name is also relevant to this event. The name Philip means lover of horses, tracing back to Scottish, Dutch, and English. Philippos, feline to love, and hippos, horse. So how appropriate this guy synced up with a big horse race. Now notice this name Philip. In our Latin or Jewish cipher, this is the other large number method on the left side of your screen here, structured around the ancient Latin alphabetic order, and what I consider to be, to this day, still the most significant cipher in the study. Well, the name Philip equals 186, lover of horses. The 186th prime number is 1109. Of course, this is part of this 911 code, which is very important to numerology. The horse that won the race, Rich Strike, was a span of 1,109 days old when he won this race. Get back to Rich Strike here. Foaled on April 25th of 2019. Now, this date, April 25th, is also connected to 9/11. Consider how the date can also be written 25/4. And the 254th day of the year is 9/11. But this brings us to another big part of the riddle. The horse Rich Strike is actually owned by a guy named Rich. His name is Richard Dawson. And just like Sonny Bono, Richard Dawson was a famous television host from the 1970s. Of course, we remember Sonny from Sonny and Cher. Richard Dawson, probably most memorable from Family Feud, although he also was in Match Game and the show Hogan's Heroes. Now, isn't it interesting that if you measure from Richard Dawson's death, this race was 9 years, 11 months later, or 119 months later? But that's not the strongest connection with Richard Dawson. Measuring from Richard Dawson's death to what would have been his next birthday, we get 5 months and 18 days. Now, if you measure from his death to the date of yesterday's race, we get exactly 518 weeks. And on top of that, the race also fell a span of 5 months and 18 days after what would have been his birthday. So we have a triple alignment with 518 and Richard Dawson. Now, the number 518 is another important one in numerology, and this will all come together in a second. The date written 518 is the date that leaves 227 days in the year, and similarly, the date written 815, which has the same digits, is the 227th day of the year. Richard Dawson's full name was Colin Lionel M., which has a reverse value of $227,000. This number was coded into the story about Tammy Lynn Sitch, also known as Sonny, whose bail was held at $227,000, an oddly specific amount given the offense of that which she's accused of doing. But the number 227 is important for one more reason. The astrological sign of Leo begins on the zodiac on the 22nd of July, the date also written 22/7. Again, the constellation that's connected to the name of the winning jockey. Before the race, I did a little glance at the numbers in the horses, and I noticed that Rich Strike was the only one to have the date with both ways written in its gematria, 57 and 75. And, of course, the race was on 5-7, which is written 7-5 internationally. Using capital letters, a cipher called Frank Baconus, which simply mixes capital and small letters together, Rich strike equals 238, and yesterday's date, May 7th, is the date that leaves 238 days on the calendar. The sign of Leo even ends on August 23rd, which can be written 23/8 on the calendar. But here's where we get to the best part of the riddle. And this is all connected to Donald Trump, who actually attended the race yesterday. The commentators mentioned that Trump hadn't been there for, I believe, over 20 years. So this is actually a pretty significant event for the race, a former president attending. And before I go on, I just want to talk about this, which I missed in my post. Notice how rich strike equals 120 and 150 in Gematria. It was written by a man named Leon, and the constellation of Leo is between the 120th and 150th degree of the zodiac, 120 and 150, just like the Gematria of rich strike, 120 ordinal, 150 reverse. Now, I want to talk about English Sumerian Gematria a little bit. This is another cipher based on the alphabetic order, which multiplies the order by 6, a significant number of time. And before the race started, I knew 888 was going to be an important number to this race, because in the language of Gematria, anything that sums to 148 in ordinal will also sum to 888 in Sumerian Gematria. Again, this year's race was the 148th Kentucky Derby. Notice how Donald J. Trump equals 148, attending the 148th race. His name is also 888. In a cipher called trigonal gematria, which uses triangular numbers and applies them to the alphabetic order, horse racing has this value of 888. Measuring from the death of Sonny Bono in a skiing accident to the date of yesterday's race is exactly 8,888 days. If you instead measure from Sonny Bono's birthday, February 16th of 35, you find that he was also 80 days into his 88th year since birth. So we actually get a double alignment here, 8,888 and then 80 days into his 88th year. The fact that it was 80 days after Sonny Bono's birthday also stands out because remember, Rich Strike was 80-1 to win. And the number 80, when you spell it out, even sums to 88. Sonny Bono was even born 88 days after the birthday of Richard Dawson. He died in a ski crash, which equals 88. It's also called a skiing accident, which equals 88. Notice how Sonny Bono was a Capricorn, and then he died under the sign of Aquarius. Both of those are signs ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is an average of 888 million miles from the sun. The two horses that Rich Strike just barely beat out at the end of this race were Epicenter and Zandon. And look at how both Epicenter and Zandon have 888 Gematria in reverse. 888 is, of course, a significant number to Jesus, the Son of God. Here we're talking about a sunny ritual. And in Greek isopsephy, the name Jesus sums to 888. According to the Gospels, Jesus was crucified during a period of darkness over the sky, very similar to a solar eclipse. Remember, the horse racing awards have the Eclipse Award. Measuring from the death of Sonny Bono to the birth of Rich Strike gives us 7,780 days. This is the Greek value of the word eclipse, 778. So this year's race was held on the 127th day of the year. We've been talking a lot about this actor Richard Dawson by virtue of a man named Richard Dawson owning Rich Strike. In Jewish Gematria, the name Richard Dawson sums to 1,270, which have the same digits as 127. When Richard Dawson died back in 2012, it was a span of 172 days before his next birthday, a number with the same digits. Dawson's death also fell 172 months after the death of Sonny Bono. And look at how the name Bono equals 172 in English Extended. This 172 is connected to 888. Notice how the number 888 sums to 172 in ordinal. And yesterday's race was 1,720 days after the 2017 Great American Total Solar Eclipse. And of course, 1720 and 2017 have the exact same digits in them. Now, also notice this Jewish value, 787, 888. This is an important number to Freemasonry, which is 787. And 787 days before the race, we had March 11th of 2020, which is the day that the World Health Organization told us that there was a coronavirus pandemic. And remember, the corona is the sun's atmosphere, which is only visible during a total eclipse. Of course, coronavirus, entirely an eclipse ritual, completely connected to the two great American eclipses. So there was a lot to unpack there, but I'm actually going to talk about how the Kentucky Derby was also connected to a really interesting news story that was published Friday night or Friday in the evening. And with all the strange things going on in the world today, why was this the top story on CNN for half the day? They were talking about suicides occurring on the USS George Washington due to uninhabitable living conditions. And as it turns out, this story was numerically connected to the Kentucky Derby, as well as the death of singer Mickey Gilley, whose death was announced in the media right around the time that the race began. So actually, let's just talk about this story and how this was by the numbers. Again, this news story about the USS George Washington, which is a aircraft carrier in the United States Navy. So why was this story in the news on May 6th of 2022? Well, first of all, notice how George Washington was born on the date February 22nd, written 222, right? In Jewish Gematria, the name George Washington equals 1399. And 1399 is the 222nd prime number, matching his birthday, 222. Well, the date of this news story, May 6th, fell 222 years after the death of George Washington, and also 222 days before the 2022 anniversary of his death. This number has always been coded into George Washington. The Washington Monument was added to the U.S. National Register of Historic Places a span of 2,002 months and 2 days after Washington died. And as I mentioned here, the word eclipse equals 222. The man who committed suicide in this story was named Xavier. In the Catholic Church, there's a very important saint named Xavier. Xavier was one of the founders of the Society of Jesus. Seen here, founder Francis Xavier, the second man listed. Well, this news story fell 222 days after the Jesuit order's September 27th anniversary. Furthermore, it was also exactly 22 weeks after the anniversary of Francis Xavier's death. And notice how the name Francis Xavier equals 202. 22 days before this news story, the Washington Monument had turned 666 months old. Actually, not the monument itself, but measuring to the date that it was designated. This is important because the Washington Monument is 6,660 inches tall. This story about the USS George Washington was also a span of 22 weeks after the total solar eclipse last year. And isn't it interesting that George Washington died 202 days before the date 704, which is Independence Day? Notice how total solar eclipse equals 202 and 704. This news story was exactly 704 days before the next total solar eclipse. The name George Washington equals 74. The USS George Washington was commissioned on Independence Day, which is written 7/4 on the calendar. Independence Day equals 74. Of course, 74 connected to the crucifixion of Jesus, the King or the Messiah, dying on the cross during the parables in the Gospels. So this post mentions why the number 1870 is significant. Crucifixion darkness. The painting made in 1870. The number 187 coded into both the Jesuit order and total eclipse 187. George Washington 187. Washington, D.C. 187. This guy was a 33rd degree Freemason, and Freemasonry's full name equals 187. Well, Kentucky Derby also equals 187. And on the Jesuit order's emblem, notice how it says IHS. Well, IHS stands for Jesus Hominum Salvator. Salvator, like the first name of Sonny Bono. Now, the Jesuit order was founded in the year 1540, like the number 154. The Kentucky Derby was held 154 days after the last total solar eclipse. There's actually a pretty deep riddle here connected to the Jesuits. I noticed that if you add up the three names of the horses, Rich Strike, Epicenter, and Zandon, the top three horses in the Derby, they sum to 136 and 1336, and these two numbers are important to the Jesuit order and the Jesuits. Now, I actually haven't done a post on this, but the Jesuit order was founded 3 days before a total solar eclipse belonging to Saros 136. And the first eclipse of Saros 136 was on 13/6 in the year 1360. Well, technically it was June 14th, but in the Western Hemisphere it was still June 13th. So check out my post for more on this. This news story about the George Washington was also on May 6th, which is written 5/6, and that's the value of both Society of Jesus and total eclipse. But this wasn't the only Francis that this story was connected to. Not only was it connected to Francis Xavier, but it was also connected to Francis Scott Key. Francis Scott Key is famous because he wrote the lyrics to the Star-Spangled Banner, which is currently the national anthem. Notice how the Star-Spangled Banner equals 779. Francis Scott Key, who wrote the lyrics, was born in 1779. And to make this connection even stronger, if you write out USS George Washington, it sums to 1779, just like the year that Francis Scott Key was born. And look how old Francis Scott Key would have been. 12,666 weeks. The day before was also 88,666 days. Our national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner. Notice how Star-Spangled Banner equals 666. The number 33 equals 66 and 60. Also 156 like 666. And notice how the Star-Spangled Banner officially became the national anthem of the United States on March 3rd, written 3-3 like 33. This news story was 33,303 days after the Star-Spangled Banner became the national anthem on March 3rd, or 3-3. And of course, the date also had 33 numerology. This whole story was connected to something that happened in July of last year. On July 8th of 2021, a pro-abortion group hung a banner over this statue, this Christ of the Ozarks statue that said, "God bless abortions." And in this post, I talked about how it was connected to 666 and the number 238. The statue was 666 months old. It stands 66 meters and was opened in 66. And then 303 days after this story, we get this story from the USS George Washington. But here's where the connection really all comes together. This story was in the Ozarks. This statue is called Christ of the Ozarks, right? Here we see it at the 93rd meridian, very significant number to Jesus. Well, Christ of the Ozarks is a tourist attraction that's very close to Branson, Missouri. They're only about 30 miles apart. And would you believe that the same day as the Kentucky Derby, just a day after this story about the USS George Washington, we got the death of a country music singer from Branson, Missouri. Mickey Gilley dying at the age of 86 in Branson. As mentioned, this was on the date leaving 238 days of the year, like Christ of the Ozarks. Actor Mickey Gilley, or I should say singer Mickey Gilley, his full name has matching gematria with Christ of the Ozarks. And again, he died 303 days after that story. He was 86. Both Christ of the Ozarks and Mickey Leroy Gilley equal 86. His full name equals 806 in Satanic as well. And of course, Branson equals 303 in Gematria, just like crucifixion of Jesus Christ, who was believed to have been crucified at age 33 in the year 33 AD. His death fell a span of 330 days before Branson's anniversary. Branson incorporated on the date April 1st of 1912. And why is the date April 1st so significant to Branson, Missouri? Well, when you write out Branson, Missouri, it sums to 861. Notice how 861 is the 41st triangular number. And again, the city was founded on April 1st, or 4/1. I just talked about this a few weeks ago, actually. Notice how Veneralia, a holiday that venerates Venus, also sums to 861. And look what date Veneralia falls on. Also April 1st. The same date that Branson, Missouri. Both of them summing to 861. 100% not coincidental. Well, look at how old Mickey Gilley was when he died. 86 years and 1 month. Syncing up with Branson, Missouri, 861. Look at Branson's coordinates of 36 and 93. Mickey Gilley was born in the year 36 on the 9th of March, or 9/3. And not only was he born in 36, he also died 36 days after Branson, Missouri's anniversary, and also 306 days before his own birthday. The name Mickey Gilley sums to 136, which is a number connected to the Jesuits, 136. The Jesuit Order, 1336. And again, the three horses in the Derby, their names summing to 136 and 1336. So when we're looking at this Saros cycle, Saros 136, which I believe is the most significant Saros cycle ever numbered in the canon. And right now, as this says, this is the Saros cycle that's producing the longest total solar eclipses. Now, the last time we had a solar eclipse from this cycle, it was on July 22nd of 2009, and this total solar eclipse went directly over the city of Wuhan, China, which is where we're told the coronavirus started. And remember, the sun's atmosphere, which is only seen during an eclipse, is the corona. Now, that eclipse was on July 22nd, the first day of Leo. And notice how the date was 22/7. Well, the next solar eclipse from Saros 136 will be in the year 2027. And 227 is the Hebrew value for total eclipse. Again, 227, the number that was coded into this story about Sonny. Actor Richard Dawson, if I can find the page I backed out of here. Richard Dawson, his full name summing to 227 as well. So a lot going on in this post, but I hope you guys understand the riddle is all connected to the sun, Sonny Bono, Richard Dawson, who shares a name with the horse's owner. Once again, it all comes together a little bit too well. All right, everyone, thanks to everybody who jumped in. Please feel free to share, like, subscribe. Peace, love, God bless, and we'll talk to you soon. See ya.